Good afternoon. I'm Doug Holder here, and I'm from poet to poet, writer to writer. And today my guest is Carolynn Kingyens, and she's the author of Before the Big Bang Makes a Sound, a book of poetry. She's also a fiction writer based in Brooklyn, and she's been published in a number of places. And I was going to first ask you, Carolynn. Uh, you grew up in a working class section in Philadelphia, um, and as a youth, were you exposed to books and literature that, or did you have any hint even back then that you would become a writer?
That's a good question. No, I was not exposed in my home to the Bible. Yes, Bible stories, yes, but not to classical literature. I'm the youngest of 7 children, and we're all scattered in ages. So I listened to like Rick James when I was like first grade. Like I listened to my older siblings' music. The funny story is I'm a second generation Italian. And when after my christening in the mid 70s, my parents left Catholicism, and that's a big deal when you're second generation, you come from this strong Italian family. And then my parents left Catholicism for evangelical Christianity. And that was a big deal. And there was a chasm there for a while. It's not a big deal now, but back then in the 70s, like you kind of stayed with your own communities and your own faith. And it was like a betrayal. So we would go to this Baptist church, and I remember I was probably 6 years old, and this DJ we would go to the ice roller skating rink at Cornwall Heights roller skating right outside Philadelphia, and they would have like our church would go like Monday nights, and we would skate around, and the DJ snuck in Rick James Super Freak in between the Hokey Pokey and Amy Grant. And I was like, this was badass. I mean, back then that beat was so original. So I had an ear for music, although I cannot sing. It's kind of an oxymoron. I could dance well, I have beat, but I cannot sing very well. But I love music. And I think I would have been a musician or write lyrics if I didn't do this. I was really had my ear to I love pop culture. I was an MTV baby because I was born, MTV came out August of 81. So it ran parallel to my life. All my memories growing up in the city, it was to all the songs. So I guess that's the catalyst for me was the music, and I was not exposed to classical literature at all.
Okay, I think Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize for Literature, didn't he? And he's he's a singer, he's a songwriter. So
Yeah.
even among academics, although there may be some discussion about some, but songwriting and lyrics are another form of poetry. What do you think?
Exactly. And they run parallel. Like one of mine are Tori Amos, Counting Crows, Bruce Springsteen. There's so many. Annie DeFranco, Radiohead. I mean, yes.
Tom, you mentioned Tom Waits.
Waits, yes, Tom Waits.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so music, was that I guess that bridge for me. Yeah, and observation. I think that's what I love about your poetry, Doug. I pick up, like, I love how you observe. And I think I was an observer before I was a writer, a poet. I think, and I have a great memory. So that song by Tom Waits, Time, comparing the sound of the rain to the applause. So what I do when I'm walking in this, in the city, taking the subway, I'm hearing the sounds. I'm like, okay, how can I describe that in a different way? Like Tom Waits said, the rain sounds like a round of applause and the wind is making speeches. I mean, that's such a non-cliche way of describing the wind and the rain. So that's where I learned. I didn't learn in a class or at home. My parents were very blue collar, no college education. So 7 kids. And we were surviving for a while and thriving. And I have no regrets. Like my parents did the best they could. They loved us, took care of us. We never went hungry, but at the same time, I had to kind of learn my own way. It was for a long time. Oh, this happened. Oh, I'm here. This is what I'm doing. There was no like, oh, I'm going to do this and then study and do that. That was too complex in my world back then,
Right. But in fact, you did study poetry at Pearl Street, didn't you?
I did, yes. And I did actually go to Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science for fashion design. I was always creative. So I went there and then I switched my major to English. I went to, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's a school called Liberty University, which has been in the news a lot. It's embarrassing. But while I was there, because I knew I wanted to get my MFA, I saved because we didn't have money. So I worked full time, went to school, not full time, I'm sorry, part time, went to school, saved my money and took classes at University of Virginia. It was African American women dramatists. It was English 460 in the summer of 97. 98, I took a class at the time it was called Randolph-Macon Women's College. It's now Randolph College. And I took contemporary American literature. So I was delving into other schools while I'm going to Liberty, because I knew it wouldn't be good on my transcripts, just that school, because I mean, they only went up to American Lit 2. They didn't do contemporary. And that's why, like, I'm a Christian, but I'm not a Christian writer, because you can't write in a box, and that's what a lot of Christian, I think they write very dogmatic, very cliche, they have to have these boundaries, and you can't do that. You have to be true to the voice. But there are places I won't go in my writing. There's certain things I won't put down other religions. I won't write about homophobia, anything violent. And I think that's pretty much across the board. A lot of, legit writers and poets, they don't do that either. But there's certain places I won't go because of my faith, but I'm not a Christian writer. So
when you say Christian, that covers a wide swath. What do you mean by Christian?
Well, my roots are, my family was Roman Catholic. They left Catholicism after my birth. So in the 80s, I grew up like my mom watched Jim and Tammy Baker. I mean, the Swaggarts, Jerry Falwell Gospel Hour, Howard Camping. I was exposed to that. I went to Christian private school. So there was a shelter there, and I had to. And a patriarchy. But
just from reading your poetry, it doesn't seem like you would be like some evangelistic Christian.
I'm not.
Oh, no.
I'm not. No, I'm not. But I have a deep faith in God. I have a deep faith in Jesus and His words. Like I believe in Jesus, and I believe in God, and I believe in, there's that kind of cognitive dissonance that some people feel, like where it's like, okay, I had this view, or this is how I was raised, but this is what I think today. But it's evolving, and I'm also holding on. Like my faith, I hold on to, because there's times I do lose it, and I'm not perfect, and I do fail, and I do apologize to my children when I'm very much, I try to live humbly, and I'm not perfect, and but I also, remove myself from toxic situations as well. I had to learn boundaries, and it's part of evolving. But no, if you read my book, I mean, there's one or two where I talk about in Bath and Crucifix, the first time I touched a crucifix as a 5-year-old, and also in the poem You Can't Handle the Truth, that deals a lot about faith. It talks about at the end, Baptists believed, or how I grew up, is you say the sinner's prayer and you're forever on God's. Well, I don't really believe that anymore. I believe there's an evolution in your faith, and it evolves. And at the end, I write, Jesus said, let me look. I forgot here for a second. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I just want to get this line right. I say, Christ says his sheep will hear his voice. I am listening. I'm listening. Mm-hmm. I don't have the answers, but I do have the faith. I don't know that makes sense.
It does make sense. I'm glad, because, I remember as a kid, I'm Jewish, right? And back in New York, when I was, I used to listen to Billy Graham. I don't know, I wanted to torture myself. And he says, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to hell. And I said, oh, Christ, maybe I should, maybe I should think about this, or maybe, but anyway.
It can scare you. It can scare you. And a lot of my writing is, I call it, Charles Bukowski is one of my favorite poets. And he says writing is the ultimate psychologist. And maybe that's why I turned to writing, just to work through I'm going to say a word, shit, that's one of my favorite words, but just to work through that. I mean, just to work through it and observe and find humanity and find vulnerability. Vulnerability is beautiful, and common ground.
Now, you are a creative person, undoubtedly, and in fact, you came up with a creative idea. I was talking to women about this idea that you had about putting a purse in a shoe.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were saying, "How can that? What do you mean? I'm going to take my
Dirty
my
shoe
shoe
heel.
off and to get my lipstick and all this?" And so I sort of, put it around my weekly writers meeting. But it's certainly original thinking. I'm wondering if that kind of thinking was put you in good stead for your own poetry and stuff.
Well, I was 19. I was at Philadelphia College of Textiles and
Yeah.
Science at the time, and I had it in my portfolio. And because to this day, Doug, I wear a purse that goes around, because in New York, New York,
Yeah.
you have to have your hands free. And I'm Italian, and I talk with my hands, so I have to have my hands free. I have my kids, the dog. So yeah, so that idea was called Soul Keepers, SOLE Keepers. And yeah, so the idea was like, okay, so let's just say you have a sneaker. And you know how you have the 90s CD where you would hit that little button and it would pop out? Well, it would slide out, and there would be like a key, a thing for a credit card, maybe these little tiny little holders, and then you can just hit the button and it slides back in. And then a heel for lipstick, a hiking boot, for like a Swiss Army knife, Band-Aids. And we did actually, and at the time I had this idea, there was this creative entrepreneur, and I told him about it, and he's like, I really like this idea. It's really great. So I found out that I had a knack for cold calling. And this is back in the late 90s, like 98, 99. And I was calling, and I talked to Steve Madden himself in New York. I spoke to the VP.
Steve who? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Steve Madden.
Oh, remind me of who he was.
He's a shoe mogul. He has
Oh.
a very like sexy, like chunky heels.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Steve Madden, yeah. I think it's Steve Madden. And then Nine West, Kenneth Cole, Candy's, Candy Shoe Store. I'm trying to think. FUBU, that was big in the 90s. Candy's, J.C. Penney. I hope I'm not missing any. Skechers too. So we flew up to New York, and we met. I made all these meetings up. I had to sign cease and desist, like not cease and desist, what's it called? NDAs. I had to give them NDAs because it was patent pending. So this is my foray like into business development. So I found out I'm a really good door opener, because I like talking to people, I like connecting, and people resonate with that, and I resonate with them, and they were like, sure. And I had like secretaries helping me get meetings, because they're golden. I mean, you treat assistants, you treat them like gold, because they are the ones you have to impress, not the VPs. So anyway, or maybe them too. So anyway, so we got these meetings, and so I found out I had a knack for cold calling, and it went far. We had prototypes made, marketing, presentations. They liked it. They sent it off to Nine West, sent it off to one of their White Plains places. And then 9/11 happened, sadly, and then the shoe bomber. So it kind of like shelved it. And I was like so down, because we worked so hard on that. And I told you
So maybe it was in demand by terrorists, that kind of shoe.
We laugh, but I mean, we can laugh about it now, but I mean,
know.
It's
at the time it was horrifying. I imagine it was
horrifying. Yeah. And also it would relay into children's world, and kids love stuff like that. So
but you have this creative imagination, and to come up with things like this, I mean, is important, in your written work. Do you think?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think I was and I write about this. There's a poem called High Anxiety in my book. I was going
to mention that. I read it.
Yeah, I have horrible anxiety as a kid. I was and it's kind of it's kind of an oxymoron, because I'm very friendly and I connect with the cold calling and can get into doors. But in terms of, I don't know if it's disassociation, but there's some kind of like out of body feeling sometimes, like I'm not in my body. So it's like the writing grounds me, and it keeps in the observation, and I have an excellent memory, very like almost like it's called autobiographical. So I have this great memory and this observation and that intuition. So those three things kept me grounded when my world was shifting a lot, because I was a little kid. I could walk into a room and I can feel, to this day, I can feel if someone likes me. I could feel if I'm welcomed. I just feel the vibes. I can't explain it. I can just feel it. And as now 47, I don't go anywhere. Like I feel, I'm like, oh, I don't feel comfortable here. I'm at the age where I can, I'm not held captive and I have to be in environments I don't like. So that's all comes into the writing and into my characters and my short fiction, because they're all flawed, but they're all vulnerable and there's something to learn.
That's a very interesting point you make, because when I teach creative writing, I said, look, not everyone, because the novice has, everyone's blonde haired, blue eyed, broad shouldered, and perfect in every way. And I said, we all have flaws, we're
Amen.
bald, we're stooped, we have, we don't have perfect bodies and all this stuff. I mean, and so if you want to do realistic writing, you've got to be able to deal with that in order to be credible. You agree?
Oh, I 100% agree. And I find the most beautiful people are not the ones that are stunning at first, but the ones that you have a conversation with over coffee, maybe laughing your ass off, like, oh my, like they are so funny. And just like they just radiate. And they're the most beautiful people to me, not the ones that are like, these models and they are beautiful, of course, but it's like the people that it's the kind of the unseen beauties that I'm interested in.
And that takes a while. It takes a seasoned writer, I think, to sort of reason that, or to realize that. But
exactly.
I read The Peggy Effect, and that certainly is about a flawed character. It seems that your protagonist is a depressed, middle-aged woman, kind of frumpy, frustrated artist with a marriage going south, and she finds redemption through art. Have you found redemption through art?
I have. If I don't write, like Bukowski said, if he doesn't write 3 or 4 times a week, something's off. And that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's my connection to God, it's like that connection that makes me feel sane,
I mean, in times of trouble, I don't know if this is biographical, but when you were 40 years old, did you go out to California and get a house, a little bungalow on Venice Beach, or was that
all imagination?
All imagination. Sounds good.
I wrote that in 2009. And how old was I in 2009? I was young. I mean, I was 30 something.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, I'm sure it has helped you. And, I'm not asking you for specific traumas or anything like that, but I mean, I'm sure it's helped you through times of trouble.
Oh, most definitely. And it's a friend, like, and I even said this about my music too, like growing up, having those long bus rides out of my neighborhood to go to the Baptist private school. Like all my friends were going to St. Anselm's and public school, and I'm getting bused. And I'm not blaming my parents, because God bless them. You just do the best you can. I'm a parent. I understand that. So I would take one of my brother's busted up Walkmans and take it with me. And it was a quasi companion. Music was a quasi companion. And you can say books are a quasi companion, and writing, because I felt isolated a lot. I didn't feel like I fit in. So writing kind of gave me power when I didn't have any power. Does that make sense? Or empowering. And it's funny because when I talk to people, I'm very verbose. But with my writing, I'm not. There's more power in my writing than my speaking voice.
Yeah, it seems to be streamlined. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's like a disconnect, because I'm chatty Cathy, and I'm so sorry, and I'm so, but with my writing, I'm savage.
I grew up in New York, and when I grew up, I was, I'm in my 60s. So, the Brooklyn I knew was not the hip place it is now with all the writers. It was, Bed-Stuy, and there was riots in the street, but there still are sometimes. But I mean, how is it living in, Somerville has been known as the Paris of New England. I don't know if you've ever visited Somerville.
I think you should be mayor, because you do such a good job at promoting.
Thank you. But what I was going to say is I want to know how it is in Brooklyn. I mean, is Brooklyn this really creative hub? Do you feel that vibe?
Yeah, just down the street this way is the Biggie's from. Just one block. There's murals everywhere on Fulton Street. Oh yeah, it's Dean. Oh, I've met so many celebrities like, Ethan Hawke, I read his book in like the 90s, 96. I read Hottest State, after a bad breakup, and it helped me get through it. But yeah, I met Ethan Hawke, and I wasn't about his movies. I'm like, I love your books. But yeah, it's just a really cool vibe. Just beautiful artwork everywhere. I just, like, this morning I went to Mr. Mellon, I got myself a beet juice. Like, there's just, everything's organic and healthy, and there's like, it just has this vibe. There's so many, there's a mosque right down the street from me. You hear the
Are young artists able to live there? Because it's very expensive.
It is very expensive. I'm not sure, like, we've been here 7 years, and this is cheapest rent we've had. We've been up at the Upper West Side by Central Park when we first moved here. It's very expensive, but yeah, I like the vibe in Brooklyn better than Manhattan. I don't know why. It's really creative.
I know there's poetry groups. I've heard about Brownstone Poets. Are you familiar with them in Brooklyn?
I've heard of Gotham. I don't think I've heard of Brownstone, but I know of Gotham.
Oh, Gotham's a writers.
Like a 24 Pearl Street. I think it's like similar to that.
But no, Brownstone Poets are a group that reads, and they're a group of stuff.
I've been pretty much like with this book. With this book, I wrote this over 11 years by myself. Wrote at night when my kids were sleeping. Like, I've been kind of on an island, to be honest, until I took the 24 Pearl Street. I was pretty much alone.
But now because I know I have a writers group every Saturday, and I find that we don't necessarily discuss writing all the time. We discuss, whatever it is, but I mean, we're all writers, so invariably it comes. Do you have anything like that?
No, I don't.
You should.
I have a virtual one. I have about 7 writers and poets that we email each other all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Well, that's what it is now. It's virtual. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, that's what I have right now. And in fact, with the Peggy effect in writing, there was a writer, Ron Samuel. He has a book called The Staff. He's from New England, but he, just do a shout out to him. He is a fantastic writer and poet, and a professor, creative writing professor. And he inspired me. He sent me Wally Lamb's Mr. Softy short story, and I read it. I'm like, this is awesome. And I wrote, my first short story was May of 2020. It was called the Gem of the Bear. So he kind of like talked to me, and I would send him stories and he would give me feedback. So he's been great. So it's always through people that kind of a new genre happens for me. Like, I want to get into screenwriting as well. I have all these ideas. I love dialogue, and I want to go into that, but I want to take a workshop. That's more the future.
Yeah. My brother, I ever tell you about my brother? He's he's in the theater there, I'm talking about scripts, and he's a Tony Award winning writing designer, and his wife now, Evan, is heads the drama department at Juilliard. So they're involved in that. It's exciting. It's
That's
exciting
awesome.
stuff. Yeah. Now I was going to ask you, I did like this one line. I mean, I like many lines, but you're talking about, and again, I imagine this is an autobiographical, but it's about the Northerners moving into a Southern area, and you had this line, how the clothes reflected the sun but never absorbed it, which I thought sort of sums up the poem. Maybe you can talk a bit.
I'm always in black.
Yeah, so am I. Yeah. It hides 100 sins, I say.
Yes, it does. Elastic and black. Yes.
Right. Yes. But what were you saying about that poem?
Well, I did. There was a time we moved around a lot. My husband's an entrepreneur. He's very creative. He has a company called yellowbrick.co. So we moved around a lot, and we went from Maryland, like DC area. We lived there for 4 years, and then moved to Virginia, Southern Virginia, almost to North Carolina for 7 years. And, this is the kiss of death. Like, if you hear, bless your heart, that's the kiss of death. Like, in the North, we hunk all the time, and you should see it here. It's insane.
I know New York. Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, I love it because they're so real. They're so real. And there's like a slight passive aggressiveness that I picked up when I lived there. I'm not putting it down. Beautiful people, nice people. I loved it there. The houses are beautiful. The nature is beautiful. It just was like, I felt like a round thing in a square. Like I just did not fit in. So that I wrote that poem in 2008, actually, The Northerners, a long time ago. And yeah, so it wasn't per se, there was elements, because with my writing, there are elements of my life in there, but I camouflage it a lot.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah, there's essences, but it's not my 100% story. Yes,
okay,
there's some truth to that, but there's some I made up as well, just my imagination.
right. You should never, as they say, you should never mistake the poem for the poet, or it's not
Exactly.
necessarily true. Although a lot of my stuff is autobiographical. But I was going to ask you to maybe read a poem or two of your choice today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference, Doug? Like I have.
I know. I mean, I read a few. I read Autoimmune. I read, of course, I read the short story, and I read Northerners. So maybe something, whatever you want to read.
Okay. I guess. Okay, okay. I'll read Autoimmune and maybe The Northerners. Does that sound good?
It's all about you. Whatever you want.
This is called Autoimmune, and I wrote this like in 2009, I believe. It was a long time ago. But sorry. Some diseases take time to manifest, turning your body against your body slowly. Cellular changes so subtle they are imperceptible for decades. Through the birth of your daughter, death of your mother, through the drawn out divorce from Richard, Dick, never truly believing him when he said he loved you, through the 5-day cross-country move when you turned 40, buying a 2-bedroom bungalow in Venice Beach, painting the house colors you wouldn't normally choose, lime green, salmon pink, banana yellow, ocean blue. You adopt a stray cat you name Kerouac. He trusts you over time, brushing his lean black body against your ankles every morning, purring, both of you content. It starts with numbness, that pins and needles feeling, the way your limbs suddenly fall flat asleep when sitting cross-legged for too long. Next, the twitching and random falling that embarrass you at first, before the diagnosis, before you learn your disease could be named. And let's see.
I always like when a cat appears.
We have a cat as well. She's 18, deaf.
Wow.
Age, but I saw cats. He's so cute.
Oh yeah, he is adorable. He's right here with me now.
How old is he, Doug?
He's only 8.
8?
He's 8. Thank God.
He's young. He's very young. So here's The Northerners. It seemed we moved into new houses every 2 years, getting up early those first mornings with loud yawns and exaggerated stretch, almost contentment. Even our neighbors were shiny and new at first, and at first we were open, taking them up on their generous invitations of summer fun barbecues and southern fish fries. You in the center of hunters, fishermen, men who like to work with their hands, a man's man, the kind my father respected and took at their word. How uncomfortable you looked standing there, holding a cold Sam Adams, bobbing your head in agreement on the art of deer hunting, aware your dear wife loved animals. How I covered my eyes as we drove by their broken, awkwardly bent carcasses strewn on the side of roads. You watched me from across the deck too, sitting at a picnic table with their chatty wives, dressed in black knit jersey, wearing my beloved amber-colored beads. You noticed the nuance in our styles, the women in their pink and butter yellow polos, their white shroud capris, how their clothes reflected the afternoon sun instead of absorbing it. You couldn't understand why every sentence started and ended with honey, like, honey, I'll get that, or you don't want to do that, honey. It was a little too intimate for Northerners.
Very good. So what's next for you? I mean, are you working on another manuscript? I think you talked to me about that you were, and we're certainly interested in the poetry. I don't do much short stories, but yeah.
Yeah, I have about 14 new poems set aside for a second book or manuscript. I'm never confident. I always say manuscript. I'm not going to say another book, but we'll see what happens. But they all got published, so I'm going to work along with that, try to find a common thread. I still say that's another year or two out. And then I wrote about 6 new short stories this past year that they all got published. And I'm going to, at the same time I'm working on the poetry manuscript, I'm working on the short story like a collection. And hopefully I'm giving myself 2 years, 2 or 3 years. Like I'm not giving it a time constraint or a firm ETA, as it evolves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty hard because of my kids. I have 2 children.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
9 and almost 11, and it's hard because of the remote schooling. I burn the candles at both ends. I'm up late at night writing, get up early. So I've been doing that for a year, like going to bed like 2 or 3, getting up at 7:30.
Yeah, I mean I get up at 3 and I do for some reason I do all my writing around 3. 3 to 6, 3 to 7. Yeah, it's quiet.
Yeah.
And, yeah. But anyway, I want to thank you very much for being on Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I respect you so much as
Thank you.
a poet and just a real, one of the good guys, as I always say, one of the good guys.
Thank you.